Hello and happy gaming, everybody. My name is Dark Sage Walker and I am here with another One Step from Eden tier list video. This time we're going to be doing the Glimmer spells. So the rules as per usual, every spell gets ranked simply as it is without taking synergies into account. That having been said, if there is an interesting synergy to talk about, I will talk about it. But that's not necessarily what this is about. This is simply ranking the spell's usefulness as they exist by themselves. I've said that in the last 3 ones as well, so let's not waste everyone's time. Let's just get on with things. Now, I'm just going to bury the lead here a little bit. Glimmer has some of my absolute favorite spells. I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible, but the fact of the matter is, Glimmer has some very effective spells. And we will be going over them right now, as soon as I get a little drink of my kiwi strawberry here. That's good kiwi strawberry. Alright, so let's get into the list. Glimmer is all about light and beams, and as such you have some very interesting effects. And I'm sure, as you can see, we've got one circle, which means there is a legendary calamity spell in here. But getting ahead of myself, let's just start with the first spell, Breakout. Hit surrounding tiles and anchors. Costs 1 mana, deals 120 damage. Not gonna lie, this spell is one of those things that just is only good in a couple of scenarios. Some of those scenarios being on Invader Celici, or against enemies that like to invade your territory, or against Seraph, but other than that, it's a bit situational. Now, if you're playing as Invader Celici, this is amazing. Even if you're playing as regular Celici, there is a way to use it, or snow loadout Celici, there is a way to use it effectively. Without one of those two things being true, I'd say it kind of falls in the C rank. It's not a good start for the Glimmer brand, but stick with me, it gets better. Circuit. Surround yourself with an electric field for 2 seconds. 1 mana and 40 damage for every time they enter the field. Once again, we're looking at the exact same scenario as Breakout. Just because it lasts longer and doesn't anchor you doesn't necessarily mean it's any better. And once again, that falls into that same area because even though you're not anchored when you're using it, it's only doing 40 damage per tick. So, I don't know, it's not great. Crossfire. Hit all tiles diagonal from you. It costs 2 mana, does 150 damage, and hits in an X starting with your spot as the primary location. I'm actually going to put this at B. Reason being is because even with how limited the spell is, if you're not playing as Invader Celici, you can still hit targets behind other targets and save hostages with this spell. So maybe it's just a little bit of a bias, but I personally think it's a little bit better than the other 2 spells we've gone over so far. And again, it's not looking too good. Right now, you're looking at going, well, you just said Glimmer is one of your favorites, and yet everything I'm looking at looks very average or below average. What are you talking about, Dark Sage? You're being weird. Trust me, it gets better, and it starts right here. Diag Beam, or I should say Diagonal Beam. Fire a bouncing beam diagonally. It does 20 damage per shot, and it launches 5 shots. Now, the diagonal spells, a lot of people have trouble aiming them. If you look at the actual like shape of the spell card, it's showing you how it's going to move. It starts off on the tile in front of you, goes diagonally up, bounces off walls, and just keeps going like that. It's, it's simple geometry. It's a simple mathematics. The idea that this spell hits 5 times and can rebound to do it again, I really like Diagonal Beam. My only big issue with it, and the reason why I'm not putting it in S grade, is because it is a little bit dangerous to use when you're trying to save hostages. beyond that, it's an amazing spell. I have no complaints. It's a good one. Energizer. Fire a shot. Raise this spell's damage by 30 for the rest of the battle. So this is one of those spells that's really good in longer fights. It loses a little bit of its luster when you're using a large deck like I do. But if you're in either a slightly smaller deck or you have something like double cast on this spell can get ridiculously strong, ridiculously fast. It doesn't take much for Energizer to become just amazing, and even 90 damage by itself is not bad. Now, when the game first launched, this started, I believe, at 60 or 80 damage, and only went up by 20 every time you used it, so it's gotten better. And I say that definitely makes a difference. Energizer definitely belongs up there. Also, small point on Diagonal Beam, since I kind of missed this. Since it does fire 5 separate shots, every bit of spell power you acquire does actually boost the damage of the spell overall by boosting the damage of each shot individually. It might seem a little obvious, just thought you'd want to know. Next up is Eternity Cannon. It costs 3 mana, does 40 damage per shot, and the shots just keep going through the entire fight. Fires a shot every second. On flow, duplicate this spell. It does consume, but it also gives 2 flow. So if you manage to have some flow before you cast Eternity Cannon, when it comes back around in your deck, you'll be able to cast it again. Again, really good for longer fights, really good in flow decks, and even just by itself, like even if you have nothing else to go with it, it can still trigger, like, consume artifacts. It can still just be 40 passive damage that's going on all the time. Like, it doesn't sound like much, but when it's a shot that's firing every second without your input, just every second, boom, boom, boom. Hey, what's that over there? Boom. Hey, I think I saw a mouse over there. Boom. Is that a helicopter? Boom. It just goes by itself. Honestly, at Eternity Cannon, I think my own personal bias is to put it at A rank, but I think in an unbiased state, most people would put it at S. So if I remove my bias from it, the rank actually improves. My own bias on it is I think it's a little overrated, but that doesn't mean that when it comes up, I don't take it and use it, so maybe there is something to that. Take it with a grain of salt, but I think Eternity Cannon is good, but maybe not like the be-all, end-all. But however you slice it, it's still good. Glaive. Missile bounces between enemies. Costs 2 mana, does 20 damage every time it bounces. So what it does is that it sends out a little blue, like, buzzsaw, and it just automatically targets a random enemy, and then just starts bouncing between enemies, just 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20. Now, this isn't super effective against enemies that move a lot, but against things like the Gate of Eden, against certain bosses that move a little bit slower than others, like, this spell is still really good. Like, even against, like, say you're up against Terra, and she's in between her attack patterns where she's not teleporting around like a crazed monkey. Or, I mean, I guess a crazed mage monkey, I guess. This will hit her a good few times while she's trying to hit you with her ground crawlers. Or her diagonal beams, for that matter. And on top of all of that, if you were to... If you have, say, like, the Mirror, and you have Fragile, or you set it to have some chance of a status effect, the idea that it's one spell that can hit multiple times, I really see no downside to it. It's cheap, it's effective, it's just an amazing spell. Glaive definitely gets my seal of approval, even if for no other reason than just fighting the gate. And it doesn't consume, so if you're up against the gate and you see Glaive comes up a second time, that's a second Glaive just bouncing around, damaging that wall the entire time you're fighting it with other stuff. It's just too good. Glitter Bomb. I do love me some Glitter Bomb. Throw a cascading bomb that hits adjacent tiles 4 tiles away. So that's a little confusing, so allow me to explain. You fire the Glitter Bomb, it hits 4 tiles away, and so it goes bada boom. And then it sends out the glitter that hits every adjacent tile around it for 40 damage, so bada bing, bada boom, bada bam. And then those all hit adjacent tiles as well. So 4 tiles away, boom, 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 ba 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 ba. It's absolutely nuts what this spell does. It covers such an amazing area, and again, it can hit either large targets or stationary targets. It can even hit moving targets multiple times. And again, if you have any spell power, if you have a status effect that you're using this with, it's just good. It's just plain good. Glitter Bomb is absolutely amazing. It only costs 2 mana, and for what it does, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful spell. I love it. I always look forward to getting Glitter Bomb, and I get disappointed whenever I don't get it. On the other hand, you could also get Glitter Storm. Rains down shots that hit their adjacent tiles. So this rains down 3 shots that all do the Glitter Bomb thing, where they hit here, then here, and everywhere. And it does that twice, so it's 1, 2, 3, it's all over the place. And it's the same thing, 40 damage for each tile that gets bombarded with very herpes-like glitter. If you like Glitter Bomb, you're gonna love Glitter Bomb on steroids. That's just all there is to it. That spell is also amazing, and again, against the gate, so good. So good. You're starting to see why I think Glimmer might be one of the best brands in the game. Let's keep going though, we're not done. Infinity Beam. Fire a laser beam until you move. So basically what happens is you pick a spot, you fire your laser, and then you are stuck in that spot firing that laser forever until you move. Now, you don't need to go very long for the damage on this to add up. It's 30 damage for every tick, and those ticks come along every few frames. Like, I want to say it's every, like, 10 frames you get another tick of 30 damage. And even on just small, like, openings in boss patterns, that's worth a lot, especially if you have, like, 25% chance to hit twice, 25% chance to lay flames, or, you know, just bonus damage. Infinity Beam, even by itself, just wrecks house. This is probably one of the just best damaging spells in the game. It's absolutely incredible, and it just decimates an entire row. Too good. On the other hand, we have Resonate. Create an explosion at every structure. So this works strangely in tandem with Hexawan build setups. So there's precedent to use this with Hazel's teardown setup, but honestly, that's about it. Like, I can't honestly say that I think that this spell is really worth it. Like, this is, I mean, in comparison to all these wonderful spells up here at top, like, this one kind of lets the brand down. Not gonna lie. It just doesn't do enough for it to be worthwhile. Shatter Saw. Shot shatters on hit and deals 60 damage to 3 different enemies. This is kind of like Glaive, except for it doesn't last as long. And again, if the enemies tend to move a lot, those shots will miss. So unlike Glaive, which lasts forever, this essentially shoots out 3 of them that just kind of, you know, scatter around. They will aim at something, but again, if you're aiming at enemies that tend to move a lot, it's hard to hit with all the saws. I don't know, I don't have the same love for Shatter Saw that I do for Glaive. But it's far from useless either. This is good for controlling a number of enemies. It does, I mean, it's 60 damage 3 times, plus the additional 20 from the first shot. I mean, it does good damage. And if you get a boss on a decent opening, that's still 200 damage. That's nothing to sneeze at. Alright. Sometimes it's good just to be able to hydrate. Next up, we have Shine. This is probably one of the spells that I overreact to the most, and it's because I find this spell to be extremely effective. Shots converge from a circle 4 tiles away. Cost 3 mana. Each shot does 30 damage, and you get 8 shots out of it. Now, you can upgrade this in so many different useful ways. You can have it apply Fragile. You can give it extra damage. You can... You can make it so you get additional shots. So, you know, shots plus 2, that's 10 shots that are all converging on that circle. Shots plus 4 in a jam, that's 12 shots, all converging on that same circle. So, Shine, like, this spell it gets work done. It costs 3 mana, which is probably about the worst point of it, so you're aiming at 4 tiles away, but say one of the shots happens to connect with something at 3 tiles away. Well, that shot is wasted on that, but everything else still converges on that 4th spot. The key is either to use it when the target is isolated, or just put piercing on it, and then it doesn't matter. So, my own bias is S rank. I'm going to put it at A though because the 3 mana cost does hold it back just a little bit. But keep in mind, I feel as though it's an S rank spell. I think Shine is amazing and I take it every time I see it. So, next up is actually Solar Beam, but before Solar Beam comes Solar Charge. So, what is Solar Charge? Well, you freeze for half a second and add 1 Solar Beam to your deck. It also anchors you for that time, which I guess, you know, freeze for half a second. What else would it be? So, Solar Charge is... I mean, let's be fair, it's kind of a waste, but what you're looking to do with it is get the Solar Beam. So, let's just get this out of the way. Solar Charge, not so great. I'm putting it at C because it's not absolutely useless. It gives you a Solar Beam. And Solar Beam is incredible, and I'll be getting to Solar Beam in a minute. But the other thing that you can do with Solar Charge is you can upgrade this so it gives you like 10 shield. You can then upgrade it again so it gives you 20 shield, or you can apply Fragile to yourself, which, as silly as that seems, there's a reason to do it. Like, this spell is far from D rank, but just by my own rules, it doesn't do much else until you upgrade it, so I'm putting it at C. Solar Beam, on the other hand. Fire a powerful wide laser. 3 mana for 200 damage. And it hits in a 3-row blast. So again, just absolute destruction coming out of this baby. My only problem with Solar Beam is that you can't really upgrade it because it's all just part of Solar Charge. So unfortunately, no upgrading Solar Beam by itself, but just a huge 3-row swath of 200 damage. That's still pretty effective. However, because it's tied to Solar Charge, that means that in order to get Solar Beam once, you need to essentially pay 6 mana. It's divided into 2 different casts, so it's not 6 mana all at once, but it's still 6 mana, and that's an awful lot to pay. Now again, in longer fights, when Solar Beam starts to come back around, because it doesn't consume, it just stays in your deck until the end of the fight. In longer battles, that's much more worthwhile. But in shorter fights, that can be a problem. So, take that as you will, but I still think it's really good. Soulfire. This is one that you want early on in the game. So, if this kills an enemy, permanently raise the spell's damage by 20 and it consumes. The idea that it consumes is the entire reason why I'm not putting it at S rank. If you get it early on in the game, this spell can get stupid. I've had a I've had a Soulfire that's been capable of doing up to like 300-400 damage before, so if you find it early enough, this spell can define your entire deck. It's a really good spell. Like I said, the idea that it consumes is the only reason why I'm not putting it at S rank. By the way, it costs 2 mana, and it does a base of 60 damage. So keep that in mind. Spirit Sword. Oh, I've gotten a lot of good work done with Spirit Sword. Hit 5 tiles in front of you for a short duration. So that doesn't mean that it only hits like 5 tiles away. So 1, 2, 3, hypothetical 4, hypothetical 5. It doesn't just hit here. It hits all of these tiles. And it just sits out there for a while. So what you do is when you have a good opening, start the Spirit Sword and then just start traveling up and down in a couple of rows. So, because every time that the hitbox of the Spirit Sword overlaps the hitbox of the enemy, it's doing that 30 damage again. Which means effects that proc on hit, like chance to burn, chance to freeze, chance to hit twice, poison, all of that can be triggered many, many times with one Spirit Blade casting. Spirit Sword is amazing, and it shreds the gate like nothing else, aside from fire. So, again, I'm putting this up here. By the way, for what it's worth, it costs 3 mana to activate, but don't be alarmed by the low damage number of 30, because you're going to get that number a lot. Just be careful while you're using it, because you don't want to lose track of your dodging. You can take a lot of accidental damage just by essentially ramming into attacks over and over again. Other than that, I got no complaints. Spirit Sword is great. Sunshine. So we've got our first and only Calamity rated spell in Glimmer. Hit all enemies with solar rays. It does consume. Now, for a Calamity spell, it's pretty cheap at 4 mana. It only does 2 damage per shot, but launches 50 shots. Now, again, anyone will tell you that if you have any amount of spell power, any amount, even just 1, that goes from 100 to 150 damage. And it's damage that the enemy cannot avoid. It just hits. Sunshine is absolutely amazing. By itself, not necessarily, but it's the idea that it's so incredibly consistent. It works well with spell power, works well with on-proc effects. Really, if you see Sunshine come up, there is no reason not to take it. That spell is great, and I will hear nothing to the contrary. Just the idea that it consumes, okay, but let's say you took Double Edge, so you've got +4 spell power, -4 defense. I'm sorry, what's 6 times 50 again? My multiplication table seemed to be evading me. Oh yeah, 300. It's 300 unavoidable damage. Come on now. And if you can get this to proc Fragile, that's even more. That's even more. Come on now. Spell is too good. Too good. Matter of fact, a lot of Glimmer spells are really good. The ones that are down here are the exception and not the rule. The rule is Glimmer rocks. And we've still got 2 more spells to talk about. Zenith, delayed 3x3 explosion on current tile, can hit self. Now, the big problem with Zenith is that it only works on one character's builds, and that would be Celicy, where she starts with it. Unfortunately, no other character really works well with this spell. So this is just the Celicy special, I guess. So if you get it for any other character, I would pretty much put it down here, because there's still a chance that you can get 150 damage on someone who's either invading your territory or right up front, like on the edge of the enemy grid, like Riva tends to be. So for every other character, I put it at C. For Celicy, I put it at A, but you have to know how to get the most out of her, like, dash in and strike, or her invader setup in order to get it to work right. And lastly, we come to Zig Zag. You fire a zigzagging shot. It costs 2 mana. It only does 10 damage, but it does it over 7 shots. So again, this spell can be really effective in spell power builds. It can be great with effects that proc on hit. The problem is, I'm just an idiot and I have a really hard time aiming Zig Zag. Like, I think I've got it on lock and then it just goes around everything that I'm trying to hit. And again, it shows it to you right there. So you fire it, it starts, so you stand here, you fire it, and it starts here. And it goes forward and up, then forward and down, then forward and up, forward and down, and so on and so forth until it zigzags back, which means that if it does hit something, there's the possibility that it can hit 14 times. This spell is good, I'm just an idiot and I have trouble aiming it. And because of that reason, I'm putting it at B, with the addendum that I think it can be just as good as Diagonal Beam. But you have to have some practice with it. So, there you go. There is the Glimmer tier list. Glimmer's spells are absolutely amazing. A lot of their really good spells are really good. A lot of their bad spells are still pretty good. And then there's one almost entirely unusable spell. And I guess if you're playing as Hazel, you can set up walls and then blow them up and hurt yourself. No, I'm sorry. I don't have any excuse for Resonate. But that's the list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you want to have a discussion about any of these, all I ask is that you keep it civil and respectful. I am totally open to discussion, totally open to changing my opinion. By all means, just let me know what you think, and hopefully you enjoyed yourself while watching me rant and rave about how much I like Glimmer as a brand. All that having been said, it's time for me to go. So, until I come back with the next video in the series, which would be Hexawan, by the way, my name is Dark Sage Walker, and I will be seeing you.